Welcome to the Sam and Sam Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm one of your co-hosts for the Sam and Sam Show, Sam McGinnis. I'd like to welcome on my other co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Sam. How about you?
Doing pretty good. We're going to start this show with the NFL this time around. We're actually going to talk the top 5 teams currently in the NFL. So I want to hit this up pretty quick. So, Sam Teets, what's your number 5?
Number 5, we're going that direction. I was getting ready for number 1, but if we want to go number 5.
We're starting the other direction.
Yeah, we can start 5. I mean, to me, number 5 team in the NFL, that's a bit trickier than I was thinking originally, but you know what? I'll go Buffalo. I think the Buffalo Bills are the 5th best team in the NFL right now. Josh Allen's having a pretty good year compared to what he's had in the past. The defense is not nearly as good as it was last year, but it's still a quality defense, I would say. And, of course, Stephon Diggs is having a phenomenal year as well. So they have all the weapons there. The defense is decent, not great. To me, the Buffalo Bills are the 5th best team in the NFL.
And, of course, they have Josh Allen, who's had a great year so far despite a loss this Tuesday.
Yeah, he's been a revelation for them so far. I mean, I've always – Mike calls me a Josh Allen hater just because I was never high on him to begin with. I thought through the first 2 years of his career he was terrible, which you look at him, statistically he was. He made a lot of bad decisions as well. But once they brought Stephon Diggs in, he's really improved. He's been significantly better. Of course, this past week was not great. 2 interceptions to 2 touchdowns. That's kind of what we saw from him over the past 2 years. But the first 4 weeks, if there any indication of how good he is, he'll be a great player in the NFL for years to come.
Well, and with you mentioning Stephon Diggs, that just goes to show how in sports sometimes players can elevate one another.
Yeah, what really helped out there was the fact that Allen had a very strong arm. He has a very strong arm, one of the strongest in the NFL. But he misfires with so many deep shots. This really killed him through the first couple of years of his career. He was the worst deep ball passer in the league, despite having a cannon for an arm. You add Stephon Diggs, and suddenly some of those deep balls are connecting, and you have a good quarterback wide receiver duo here that's producing at a very phenomenal pace.
Well, there you go. And now we move on to number 4. Sam Teets, your number 4.
Yeah, my number 4, and this is a bit tricky, honestly, to put all these teams together, but my number 4, I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs. The reigning Super Bowl champs are on number 4 right now.
Go ahead. I will say I did watch them the end of the game versus the Raiders. And actually, despite the fact that they were down, they didn't look like they were doing too bad.
No, but if you watch the end of the game, you missed the part where they were doing bad. They had a good streak. I want to say the final 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, they kind of came alive a little bit. But really from halftime or even midway through the second quarter all the way until maybe the start of the fourth, they weren't playing good football. To me, the Chiefs had one loss. We'll see they'll probably turn it around. But really, up and down the Chiefs right now. The defense has been hot and cold. Even Patrick Mahomes, to some extent, has been hot and cold. I put the Chiefs at 4 because of the most recent loss. In the end, I think it won't matter. They'll make the playoffs, and they'll still be a great team and still compete for a Super Bowl. But for right now, number 4. Well,
and yes, and we do have to consider with future rankings the fact that they just picked up Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, that's something big to me. I think Mike and the other Sam we had on our show earlier today for the NFL show, they thought Le'Veon Bell has been somewhat of a locker room cancer. And let me just dispel that rumor. He was not that way in Pittsburgh. But it was a different situation entirely. In Pittsburgh, it was he wanted to get paid, and that rubbed off poorly on his teammates because they were all in. Pittsburgh, when they had AB, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, they wanted to win a Super Bowl. It was an all-in mentality, and Bell wasn't really buying into that, so his teammates kind of got upset about that. But in reality, you can't blame an NFL player for wanting to go out and get what they're worth. I mean, look at Dak Prescott. This guy was potentially going to get $40 million a year or $35 million a year. And then his leg snaps, basically, and now he's going to get significantly less than that probably when he goes to negotiate his deal next year. So I don't fault Bell at all. And in New York, New York was an Adam Gase problem, not a Le'Veon Bell problem. So really, this whole locker room cancer kind of reputation that Le'Veon Bell has, that's not really accurate.
Well, and since we brought up Dak Prescott, the unfortunate part now is he was having one of the best years of his career and then getting injured when you're putting up the numbers you need to get that better contract really hurts.
Yeah, he was pacing over 6,000 passing yards. Now, would he have actually gotten there? Probably not. But that's Mike McCarthy's offense. You never know because he just loves throwing the ball. And for some reason, not using Ezekiel Elliott down the stretch. But really, this is the true reality of the NFL. You have to make the money while you can. So I don't fault Le'Veon Bell for holding me out that year in Pittsburgh, although I don't think it was necessarily a smart thing to do because you were already going to make a lot of money. The Steelers even offered him a long-term deal that was fairly close to what the Jets gave him. So really, I don't think he made the right decision per se. But at the same time, I can't fault him for wanting to just get what he thinks he was worth.
Right. You did hear my question, right? You phased out there for a second on my end.
Oh, yeah, about Dak Prescott, right?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. What? I say the question again.
All right. Let's move on to number 3 here. You are in number 3?
Yeah, so my number 3 in these power rankings is going to be the Seattle Seahawks, and I hesitate when I say that because Russell Wilson is by far the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Let's be honest. The only reason I'm holding Seattle down is because the defense. I mean, the defense is not.
The defense has been garbage.
Yeah, it's been bad.
One of the of all the good teams you see up there, they could have the worst defense of the good teams.
Yeah, really, they really could. They have good players. I mean, Jamal Adams hasn't been able to play because of a groin injury. He's been out. They have Bobby Wagner. They have KJ Wright. They have Shaquille Griffin. They have good players. It just hasn't come together for whatever reason. I don't know. It hasn't come together for them this year. That defense has been horrible. So if you're putting them against a team that's more of a complete unit, I would have trouble picking the Seattle Seahawks, even though Russell Wilson is a phenomenal player and hopefully will win the MVP this year.
Yeah, I would say as to this point, many people would think he deserves it.
Oh, he definitely does. I mean, he's been great throughout the year. And even if he's not putting up the most yards and touchdowns of anyone, he's by far been one of the most efficient quarterbacks. And like I said, he's carried this team for so long, and now he's finally got some help in DK Metcalf, and he's got no defense still, but he's carrying this team to an undefeated record so far.
Yeah. I think for Russell Wilson, that would be something to think about moving forward is trying to get the coaches to start focusing now on the defense because he's got it covered when it comes to the offense with DK Metcalf. But let's move on to number 2.
My number 2, and this is really, I mean, the top 3 to me is such a mix-up. It's hard to tell off the top of my head who I want to put where. My number 2 team, I'm going to say the Tennessee Titans. So they just came out, put up a great game. And this was after not having like an in-person practice for basically 2 weeks. They came out, and they just picked apart the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, who were red hot coming into the week. They were undefeated. And they go out there. Derrick Henry didn't have a phenomenal night, but he grinded the clock down. Ryan Tannehill was terrific. And that defense was much better than the defense they had against Buffalo was as good, if not better, than Buffalo's defense from last year. They had an elite defense. They had Jadeveon Clowney in that unit, which adds a little more speed to the edge. And frankly, if they keep playing this way, they could overtake the number 1 team.
Well, and this is nuts because last year we were talking about this, and I don't know if it was me, you, and Mike that were on when we were talking about this, but we were thinking the Tennessee Titans would be kind of a one-year wonder and return to that 9-7 that we saw previous years, but that's not what we've seen.
No, not at all. They've been consistent. They've been improving, I would say, actually. Mike Vrabel is a tremendous head coach so far in his career. His players play hard for him, and they're playing with a lot of confidence right now, which is really what they need. Talent-wise, I don't know if they stack up as well to some of the best teams in the NFL that we've already mentioned, but they're playing like they belong in the conversation. And that's why I have them at number 2.
All right, let's move on to your number 1.
It's the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And really, the reason for this, Aaron Rodgers has been great. Aaron Rodgers is the second best quarterback in the NFL right now behind only Russell Wilson. Devontae Adams has been hurt, but he's coming back this week, so they'll have the number 1 receiving option back. They have Aaron Jones. Defensively, Jair Alexander, the cornerback, has been arguably the best in the NFL so far throughout the season. They have good safeties, Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos. Of course, Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith are great pass rushers. So they have, to me, a complete team. Even that defense has a little bit of a hole in it. I would take the Packers over anyone else right now.
And in the NFC, I would also, even if you're not going to argue they're the best team in the NFL, I could see them as being the best Super Bowl contender you have in the NFC at the moment.
Yeah, it really comes down to them in Seattle and the NFC at the moment just because the Seahawks don't have that great defense right now. I think that's the big difference between them and Green Bay.
Well, right, and we haven't seen any sort of consistency from the Saints to this point as they're 3-2 despite the fact that they were supposed to be contenders. And then Tampa Bay, it's the same story.
Yeah, that's why I don't have them up there right now. Is those are 2 teams that we thought would be tremendous this year. They're actually at worse records than the Chicago Bears right now. when they get to the playoffs, when they get around the middle point of the season, I expect they'll put it together and go on runs and enter the postseason with 10 wins or more. But for now, they're a little inconsistent. They're still finding their way, dealing with injuries. So I can't put them in the top 5 at the moment.
Yeah, and unfortunately for the NFL, this week we have more COVID cases, specifically on the Patriots, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, the Patriots have a new COVID case that came out recently in this afternoon. So it's going to be interesting to see how they move forward with this whole situation. It's been a problem now since basically week 3. I want to say at the end of week 3, beginning of week 4 is when we started seeing these COVID cases crop up across the NFL. And New England, they've had issues with this too. They already had Stephon Gilmore and Cam Newton get sick. They have a game on Sunday at 1 o'clock versus Denver. We'll see if the game gets played or not. But some other good news, the Atlanta Falcons, who had, I think, 1 positive COVID test, they were allowed back in their facility today, so the Falcons are going to be playing this weekend. The Colts had positive tests this morning, but those actually came back and they were false positives, so the Colts are going to be playing their game as well. Overall, this is not that bad, honestly. One team having an issue out of 32 in the NFL, that's probably not a bad thing. We should probably accept that.
Well, and the other thing you have to consider is, unlike the NHL and the NBA, where they could have bubbles, they can't really do that with NFL players for months and months on end as you go through the season. So you should be happy that your season's going at all.
Yeah, just because of how long the season is, you can't do that. And also just the size of the NFL teams. The rosters are so huge compared to like the NBA when you have maybe 15 guys traveling with the team plus the staff. And you've got the NFL, it's just 4 times that much or 3 times that much. It's just too many players to possibly put in a bubble. I mean, they might put something together for the postseason, but right now it would just be impossible with all 32 teams.
Well, and the postseason should be a consideration because if you think about this, what if, and I think we talked about this a little last time, but what happens if you're about to play the Super Bowl and one team comes up with a whole bunch of COVID tests?
Yeah, and can you just move the Super Bowl back a week? I mean, really, you can't do that. So you have to come up with some kind of security measure when you do reach postseason that you're going to have these games at set times because you have so much money invested in having that game at that set moment. I would assume they would be selling tickets because they're already selling tickets to regular season games. So there'll be some extra financial, concern there to have the game at the set time. I would assume there'll be some kind of bubble protocol installed.
All right. Do you have any other NFL news for us before we moved on?
No, I think we covered most of it.
All right, good. Because now we're moving on to NHL news. What we're gonna do this time around, we had at least one new goalie sign this week that I actually heard about from my buddy Will, who improved my day significantly by this. Because the Red Wings came up with a goaltender. But why don't you read them off one at a time, and I'm going to tell you whether I think they're a hit or a miss, because this is actually pretty easy for me.
All right. So we got Thomas. Is that Grice to Detroit?
Right. So it's funny.
Grice.
You're not the only person that has said Grice before. It's actually Grice, despite the fact that it might look like Grice.
It looks like Grice. Okay, you can give me a pass for this one. I've read people's names Grice before that looked that way. So
yeah, we have Thomas Grice to the Detroit Red Wings. I think this is a hit. The fact of the matter is, Thomas Grice is a solid goaltender. He's played backup or tandem, depending on how you consider it, with the New York Islanders for the past few years, and he's done very well. My one concern comes with this. He has played with one of the arguably top 3 defenses for the past few years. He is now going to one of the worst defensive situations in all of the NHL. I expect that will affect his play to some extent, but the question is how much. So that is my concern with him.
Yeah, when the supporting cast changes, it's always an issue you have to look towards. Cam Talbot to Minnesota.
I also see this as a win. For anybody that watched Cam Talbot during these last playoffs, he was fantastic against the Stars, who actually, despite their original mentality, were able to score a lot of goals during the postseason, and he shut them down very well.
All right, we're down to 3. Corey Crawford to the Devils.
Okay, so Corey Crawford helped lift the Blackhawks to a postseason along with Robin Lehner. His save percentage this past season was .919. So that's a really good save percentage, and you're helping your team come from nothing to something, along with Robin Lehner, who's also a fantastic goalie, despite the fact that neither of those goalies are with the Blackhawks anymore. But yeah, that's also a hit. Again, though, you're still not going to be in a great supporting cast situation. So hopefully Corey Crawford can figure that out.
All right, Braden Holtby to the Canucks.
So Braden Holtby to the Canucks. Here's the thing. This last year was interesting. His save percentage, if I'm remembering correctly, was below 900. For those who are wondering, that is horrendous. That is awful. And then once again, you're finding yourself in a situation where the Capitals as a whole choke away an opportunity to continue in the postseason. Do I think this is a hit? I think it could most certainly be a hit. Braden Holtby has been a fantastic player, but the question becomes, will some of that rub off onto the Canucks, which is the last thing the Canucks fans want to see, especially after having long playoff droughts until recently? But yeah, well, for right now, we're saying this is a hit. I do think he can turn it around.
All right, Jacob Markstrom to the Flames.
Again, the nice part about this set of goaltenders that have come in is all these goaltenders have been good. I don't think we've mentioned a goaltender yet that isn't, generally speaking, a solid goaltender. And you're talking Jacob Markstrom. Okay, he was a dark horse Vezina candidate this past year. For those who don't know what that is, it's just goaltender of the year award. It's basically what it is. So he was dark horse for that. Helped the Canucks get to the second round in the playoffs. So you've also won your first series in a number of years. And he played very well this season. So I think this is also a hit for the Flames. They have David Rittich also, but I'm not really sure he's a number one. So this was a good move to find a number one goaltender.
All right, and the last one we have to review, Matt Murray to the Senators.
So this remains more questions, especially when it comes to the supporting cast issue. The Senators haven't been a great team the last few years. They've been pretty horrible, actually. But I did see a little bit from Anthony Duclair, actually, on that team. So I'm starting to get slightly intrigued, but I wouldn't put your foot on the gas yet with the Senators. And Matt Murray has struggled this last year, and it's a similar story to the Capitals and Braden Holtby. So there's questions here, and so it's really going to depend. But for right now, I'm going to say miss because how much can he do without a supporting cast? And he came from an organization that was doing good, and he was struggling. So you got to think about that.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Penguins, probably not that sad to see him go at this point. He did have some issues, I know, the past 2 years at this point.
Well, and now they've got Tristan Jarry, who made the All-Star game this last year. He's very new, though, so it's also a little surprising to see them just be okay with him taking over so soon.
If you have a good player, maybe just play him. I can't give you a response to that, really, but...
Well, right, but then it's the question of, was it 1 year? Because he's new. You don't necessarily know what the long-term output is going to be.
That's true. Maybe just felt comfortable moving on from Murray because it was not that he was declining. He's still in his mid-20s. I think the issue could be that the inconsistency might have finally gotten to the point where they were like, we can't justify keeping you around that much longer.
Well, and now the unfortunate part is Matt Murray. For him, he's headed to the Senators, which is a much worse situation to be in.
Yeah, we'll see if he can pull through in there. But is that all the NHL news you want to talk about?
Yeah, we can move on to thinking or dreaming.
All right. So I'll ask you my first question. NFL teams should have to forfeit games if too many players get sick. Is that thinking or dreaming, McGinnis?
Okay, so that's worded interestingly, so I'm going to ask a question before I answer that. You said should. Do you think that I think the NFL will, or just that the NFL should?
The NFL should, not will, should.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we had that clarification down. So here's the thing. If a game isn't played, you've got a couple of options. You've got an option of just having less games or putting more on the end of the season. I think this should only be in the most extreme case. I think in any situation possible, you should try to find another way to play the game, even if you have to add a couple weeks to the regular season. It's a weird year, but just because someone gets sick, unless they were being stupid and negligent, I think you should do everything possible to allow more weeks.
No, I'm right there with you. I agree. They should add more weeks into the season to avoid possible cancellations. If that's what it comes to, I don't think there should be a situation where you cancel games. This is the NFL. You're not supposed to be canceling games in a league like this. So really, I'm right there with you. And then my second one, Josh Allen is a top 3 QB in the NFL.
So if you had just taken this year, you would be thinking,
just this year, just this year.
Okay, I was about to say, because if you're taking prior years, if you're talking like in the NFL perspective of long term, I couldn't say that because we don't know if this is kind of a 1-year hit for Josh Allen or otherwise. But if you're just taking this 1 year, okay, yeah, he's probably a top 3 QB. You're thinking that. But if you're taking it from a whole perspective, we're in a bad situation in which we don't know what's happening. Heck, we don't even know what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So we don't even know if this will stay this way. So it's a very shaky thinking.
McGinnis, this is dreaming. Josh Allen is not a top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now. I think it's number 1, Russell Wilson, number 2, Aaron Rodgers, number 3, me is still Patrick Mahomes, even though he had a shaky game this past week. So did Josh Allen. So I really can't change that. Or number 3 could even be Ryan Tannehill, because Ryan Tannehill had a really good game against Josh Allen. So to me, I think Josh Allen's top. I think he's top 5. I don't think he's top 3 right now.
Yeah, and that might be a fair statement. I was more looking because I just got done looking at some of the stats because I saw that question right before it came up. But they clearly have not been updated from what you said about the 2 interceptions. But 12 touchdowns to 1 pick. His completion percentage, if I'm not mistaken, is very good. He is throwing a good amount during a game.
Yeah, so through those first 4 games, I think you're right.
Credit of top 5, I think.
Yeah, no, through the first 4 games, I think it's the numbers you're seeing right now. You're right. He was phenomenal through the first 4 games. Just this past week against Tennessee was kind of shaky. So top 5, I would say, but not top 3 right now.
All right. So we'll move on to mine real quick. So we talked about hockey a little bit, but I'm curious, coming from a non-high-end hockey guy, what your initial examination of this is. Goaltenders are more important to hockey than QBs are to football.
Yeah, this is a tricky one to answer. It's the only things I know more about soccer. I know you're not a big soccer guy, but I know more about soccer than I do about hockey. And the goaltenders in soccer operate similar to quarterbacks in the NFL, whereby you run the defense. You basically are running the entire scheme. The coach will have some input as well, but the goaltender usually positions defenders, tells them where to move, and tries to point out different attack patterns that are coming in every time. So if that operates on any similar level, I would say that the goaltenders are more important because you are on the court or on the ice the entirety of the time. You are not, except when, of course, you rotate guys, I guess you could say, but ordinarily you would just look at
that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, look at it in a vacuum, though. You're saying you've got a goaltender who's on the ice for the entirety of the time versus a quarterback who's only on the field half the time. I think we could see NFL teams win Super Bowls with good defenses and terrible quarterbacks. I don't think you will see an NHL team win a Stanley Cup with a bad goaltender.
And there you go. All right, and number 2. The Chiefs are clearly better than the Ravens, and the AFC Championship game will be a rematch of the Titans and the Chiefs.
You know what? This is thinking because the Chiefs beat the snot of the Ravens.
I like the rematch. I like the rematch idea.
No, I do too. The Chiefs beat the snot of the Ravens. What was it? Last week or the week before that? The Chiefs, 2 weeks ago. The Chiefs beat the Ravens very solidly. Lamar Jackson didn't look good at all. The Ravens, they were a team that I didn't mention in my top 5 teams earlier during the show because I don't think they're a top 5 team right now, despite all the talent they have. Tennessee, though, I did mention Tennessee is a top 5 team. I mentioned Kansas City is a top 5 team. Right now, I would agree with you, even if Tennessee faces Baltimore in the playoffs, because Tennessee beat Baltimore in the playoffs last year, I would still think you're on the right track. You were saying it's going to be Tennessee, Kansas City, AFC Championship game.
And on the topic of Lamar Jackson, for those who did not watch his game against the Bengals, he threw 1 pick, but he arguably should have had 3. One of the should have been picks literally bounced off of the defender's chest. And this is against the Bengals we're talking about, by the way.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson has not been great this year. I mean, he struggled significantly. I have him in my quarterback rankings towards the bottom of the top 10. I'm telling you right now, unless he has a good game this week, I'm going to drop him outside of the top 10. Because if I didn't, first off, Mike was scaring me alive. Second off, just because he hasn't earned the top 10 spot right now. I give him a lot of credit, and I tend to give a lot of these guys credit for what they've done in past years. But realistically, I've had Brady drop out to the top 10 points because he's been mediocre in certain games. He's been elite in others, but mediocre in certain ones. And if I do it for Brady, I'm going to do it for Lamar too.
Yeah, and sometimes that just happens, and sometimes it's just a down year. We see that with goaltenders too. Sometimes you just have a down year. This might be that for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think long term he's still going to be a viable starter for at least the next 6 years. I'm not like a guy who says he's going to get figured out and he's going to be riding a bench or out of the NFL in 4 years. I don't believe that. I think he'll be around for 5 or 6 years at the very least. I think he could be around for a decade. But yeah, he's not playing that well this year. I think he's definitely got higher potential. He's got a higher ceiling than this. But for some reason, I can't pinpoint why he's struggled so far through the first couple of weeks of this year.
All right. Well, let's move on to our NBA update. I know you've got something for us there.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Lakers have won a record-tying 17th title, tying them with the Boston Celtics for the most all time. LeBron now has his 4th championship and his 4th Finals MVP. And people will debate the legitimacy of the bubble. I know Mike says it's not a legitimate title. I completely disagree. Just because it was the Miami Heat, who were the best team in the East. Some people will debate that. I'll say they were definitely the best team in the East. They are my favorite team as well, so that's a bit of a homer pick. And the Lakers were also the best teams in the West. These were kind of teams we expected to be here all along. So to me, this is a legitimate title. The Lakers win another one. And LeBron gets closer to cementing himself as he's not going to be the greatest of all time. He won't pass Michael Jordan in my mind because I have Jordan at 1. He won't pass Jordan until he wins 6. If he wins 5, I would say maybe 75-25 split with LeBron getting 25, Jordan getting 75. But really, for me, LeBron needs to win 6 titles to pass Michael Jordan, so he's a little bit of a long ways off there.
Well, but with the Lakers team he has, if they keep him around, there's a potential that he could win a couple more before he's done.
Yeah, he could win. I could see him winning another one, honestly, because Anthony Davis has already said he wants to re-sign. I do have some moving pieces, like Rondo's going to be leaving, Dwight Howard's going to be leaving supposedly this offseason. So they have some pieces that might be splitting off. But really, if they keep AD and LeBron there, that's all they need. And we saw the Clippers have serious issues. They hired Ty Lue as their head coach. I mean, he won championships with LeBron in Cleveland, but let's be honest there. That was a lot of LeBron and a little bit of Ty Lue. So to me, they still have an advantage in the West. And I could see them winning another championship here before LeBron's prime ends.
Yeah, and that would help him move up, as you said. And now we can move on to college football. Clemson destroys Miami at number 7, which I'm sure made you very happy.
Oh, it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. I mean, I was a little nervous early on in the game, and then we had a situation where Clemson was trying to kick field goals, and I think they blocked 2 of them, and they were returning one for a score. So I was just like, stop kicking the field goals. We're up by like 14 points. You don't need the field goal. Let's just keep the 2-score lead. Just run with it. So really, I was nervous there for a bit, but Clemson does pull the win out, 42-17. I mean, De'Ara King, who I've been praising prior to this week, was just awful, or he looked awful against Clemson's defense, but just because they got embarrassed. Him and the whole offensive line and the running game for Miami got embarrassed. The defense got embarrassed. And really, Clemson just dominated. And I was concerned that they wouldn't match up well against a team like Miami. But now I'm totally confident in Clemson going undefeated this year because they've shown they can win those big-time matchups and just win easily.
Yeah. At least for a number 7. They haven't have they faced a top 5 team yet?
No, they will eventually. Notre Dame's number 4, and they face Notre Dame later on in the year.
Okay, yeah. So you'll get to see. I think outside of the top 5 with those kind of teams, you can't quite tell yet. But yeah, it is nice for you anyway to see them destroy Miami because they probably should.
Yeah, they probably should. But to be honest, Notre Dame and Miami, they're not that far apart in terms of talent. Just because you look at their players they have on paper, Ian Book's the quarterback for Notre Dame. And if I had to put like a quarterback tier class, Ian Book and De'Ara King are in that B group, right below the group that has Trevor Lawrence and all those other – and Trevor Lawrence is the very few great quarterbacks in college football right now. To me, Notre Dame is not that far removed from being just another Miami. So I'm not that really worried about playing Notre Dame later in the year.
All right, he's confident. But we also have Alabama, who will be facing off against number 3 Georgia. Here's my question, though. Does Alabama even deserve the 2nd spot?
Really, I think Alabama deserves the 2nd spot. I know I understand why you're asking me this question, but at the same point, I feel like They absolutely do. And one thing that might group people off is Nick Saban does have COVID-19, so it'll be interesting to see if he's actually on the sidelines for this game or not. I'll assume he'll be there some way, whether it's virtually or in person. But, yeah, they deserve this. I know they lost a lot of guys this past year. They have a tremendous running back. They've got 2 really good receivers. And their quarterback, he's solid. He's not fantastic, obviously, but he's good enough to get the job done. And they beat Texas A&M, which is number 13 in the nation, 2 weeks ago, 52-24. They beat Ole Miss this past week, 63-48. The big issue for me here is that there are holes in this Alabama defense. The offense is fine. The defense is a little bit questionable. They're going up against Georgia. Georgia's been a very good program, very well-rounded program for a number of years. So it'll be interesting to see how that Georgia offense matches up against that Alabama defense.
Who do you think comes out on top in this one?
I'm not betting against Nick Saban here, honestly, just because I've seen schools like Georgia and Oklahoma or whoever blow leads against Alabama the last couple of years. So really, I'm not betting against Alabama just because they've proven they can come in here and they win these types of games. And even if they get down early in games, they've proven they can come back and win them. So I'm not betting against Alabama.
All right. Do you have any other college football news?
No, I think it's the majority of all the stuff that matters this week. They're just a bunch of games that don't, I'll be honest, really matter in the long term.
All right, and we've got the flex of the week. We talked about it a little bit, but you want to hit them up with that?
Yeah, it's Le'Veon Bell forcing his way out of a terrible situation with the New York Jets where he had a terrible coach who didn't want him, where he had a GM that didn't sign him, where he's just on the worst team in football by far. But Joe Flacco's starting at quarterback this week because Sam Darnold's hurt. He forced his way out. He's going to get his money regardless. And he signed with the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And really, I mean, he was going to get the same amount of money pretty much regardless of what the situation was going to happen. So this doesn't hurt him financially. And now he's on a team with a chance to win a title. They can rebuild his value a little bit, playing behind the rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Maybe sign a decent-sized contract this offseason. To me, this is just the biggest win for Le'Veon Bell possible. And the Chiefs face the New York Jets later this year. So there's a little bit of a revenge game there. And by the time Le'Veon Bell will have learned the playbook, he'll be ready to go. We'll see how it all plays out.
And more than likely, Kansas City will win that game. So that will be most certainly a revenge game for him.
McGinnis, they might win that game by 70 points.
This isn't college football now. This is the NFL. It won't be by that much.
The New York Jets are a college football team, McGinnis. Let's be honest. Let's not go that far here, okay? The Jets, calling the Jets an NFL team, and I'm only joking when I say this, but calling the Jets an NFL team is a little bit of a stretch right now.
No, that's the Lions. You see, the Lions is just stretched to call them a college football team.
Yeah, see, you have a quarterback in Matt Stafford.
Yeah, we
at least
have a quarterback.
I do like Sam Darnold in New York. I do like Sam Darnold. I just think that Adam Gase has absolutely ruined him. Similar to what Matt Patricia has done to Detroit's defense.
Yeah, I love how our defensive coordinator, the defensive mastermind, came in, and now we're like 9-24, 23-1 with him.
If you mixed Matt Patricia and Adam Gase together, you would have the worst overall head coach possible. You would have one that's supposedly good at defense but can't coach a defense, and you would have one that's supposedly good at offense but sucks at managing his offensive players.
Yeah, guys, you can't call someone great until they've actually proven it outside of another organization as an assistant.
Yeah. So don't get too high on guys like Matt Patricia. And even Adam Gase, I mean, he was decent in Miami for like maybe a year or two, and then he was awful in Miami. Now he's in New York, and he's awful in New York. So really, this doesn't shock anyone.
And now we move on to our final segment of today, and that's this week's biggest failure in sports. So we're actually moving to a sport we haven't talked about yet, and that's baseball. Move to the MLB. The Dodgers destroy the Atlanta Braves 15-3 after being down 2-0 in the series. But then they go out the following game and they lose 10-2. How about this, guys? Let's make a fantastic statement and then do nothing with it. That's a fail.
I'd argue the biggest fail was that Clayton Kershaw was the starting pitcher. This guy was a future Hall of Famer who was notoriously struggled during the postseason. He was your starting pitcher. And you lost the game. The guy who he was facing as the other star on the other team was a young guy, fairly new prospect, only had a couple of games, I believe, of actual practice time or actual game time. And then Clayton Kershaw goes out, and they lose badly. Clayton Kershaw was outpitched by a young guy, and they're losing right now. They're actually playing in our game tonight. They are losing 2-0 at the top of the third. And the Dodgers, the Yankees have some of the highest payrolls in the MLB, or in Major League Baseball. I shouldn't say the MLB. Everyone hates when I do that, but they have some of the highest payrolls. The Yankees are gone. The Dodgers are fighting for their postseason lives right now, and it looks like, from the way things are going right now, they're going to be not eliminated here. The Braves are going to move on. The Dodgers and Clayton Kershaw are going to get sent home yet again, and all that money that you spend on this team this year will just be wasted.
Well, and the real question is, who will stop putting in Clayton Kershaw? Listen, fine, regular season, do it. But his postseason, every time it matters, he's gone. Stop putting in Clayton Kershaw.
He seems to have issues with the postseason. He has every issues that he's either really hit or miss in the postseason. He has some very good games, but then he has these historic blow-ups, so they're just not good at all. And again, I don't understand it. I don't know if it's a mentality thing. I don't know if he's just tired by the end of the year. Although this was a shorter season, so you think that wouldn't have happened. I don't get it. He's not as dominant as he was, I'll say, 4 years ago anymore either. So there's the kind of age and a little bit of wear and tear getting to him at this point. I mean, it's disappointing for him. And the only thing I could say maybe are the bats tonight if they get hot. But again, it's not looking that way so far. They have no runs against the Braves early in this one.
Yeah, somebody needs to stop starting him in the postseason. I don't know why they keep doing that. When you have consistent choking issues, how can you trust that player anymore? You got to find somebody consistent.
Well, the issue is that there are fewer of those consistent guys than you would expect. And also when you have the bullpen going, your rotation is built in the fact that you have that number of guys to play. And Clayton Kershaw, he's one of those guys you absolutely have to have in that rotation. Otherwise, you're going to be using arms you don't want to use. You're going to be tired later in the series. You have to play Clayton Kershaw at some point.
Right.
Whether you give him the moniker ace anymore in the postseason, that's something entirely different. You could say he's no longer an ace player for you, but you still have to play him.
So the real key then, I would think, is to avoid putting him in high-end crucial games and situations, because otherwise you can have these gigantic blowouts, because, again, we've seen this.
Yeah, that's true. I don't entirely disagree with that, but sometimes it's just how your rotation works out. You'll have guys who need to rest, and he could just be that guy's deal. When he originally had been scheduled to pitch a different game, but I believe there had been a setback with his back or shoulder or something like that, so he had to get moved back to this one. But, I mean, look at it this way. I don't know if Clayton Kershaw being pitcher would have saved the Dodgers in the series just because of how it's played out so far. They had that one blowout game that we talked about already. But other than that, they haven't had a tremendous series. So really, I don't know if Kershaw not pitching would have saved them here. The Braves won 10-2 in the first game. And the Dodgers come back. Then they win, Braves win again. Really, I don't think it would have saved them. I really don't think it would have altered the outcome of the series. And I was 10-2, sorry. 10-2 was last night, but it was 5-1, 8-7. Then the Dodgers win 15-3 and 10-2. So really, they've been beat pretty thoroughly in this series. I don't think Clayton Kershaw could take all the blame. I don't think he would have been the one to alter this.
Well, and even if that is the case, I'm just saying in general, they had gone to the World Series a couple, 2-3 years in a row, right? Something like that.
Yeah, they've been knocking at the doorstep for a while now.
And Clayton Kershaw has been at the feet of their losses a number of times to this point. I would just think someone would do everything they can to avoid high-end situations with him. Regardless of whether it would affect this series, I would have at least thought that.
I understand what you're saying. I also get why you would play him. So I kind of get what you're going at right now, but I'm not as in-depth in baseball as I am in football, so I can't really say for certain. I do understand what you're saying. I would think.
Like, we ought to bring on our MLB guy that Mike has come on shows as well. But maybe we can talk with him about it then. He'll know more. Former Padre, I think.
Yeah, that would really help us out. You have to really give us a bit of an idea what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it would. But unless we've got anything else, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I just want to remind people we have 2 sponsors right now. We have Demolishing Technologies. You can go check them out. RCAND.com. I messed that one up. RCANDT.com. And you can also check out Manscaped. They're our new sponsor. I know Mike probably has the ad we're getting ready at some point, but
yeah,
you can use promo code TGT20 they get 20% off your order, I believe. So you can, or maybe it's just 10%. I don't know. I just assumed it was 20, but you can check it out. We do have an ad now up on our page. You can click that, go right to their website. Again, TGT20 for a little bit of a discount code when you buy any or when you purchase anything. So please go check out our sponsors. Check out thegruelingtruth.com where we post all of our podcasts and articles, podcasts being in just audio format. And again, articles, we post them all the time, every day. So feel free to go check those out. And you can check out the Grueling Truth Facebook page, which most of you are probably listening on right now, for all of our podcasts from everywhere. But for now, this has been the Sam and Sam Show. For Sam McGinnis, I'm Sam Teets. We hope to see you next week.